Again, thanks for the opportunity to speak here today on the Sustainable Development Goals. Again, as Michael pointed out, I'm here to speak on goal number 2, zero hunger. So it's much broader again as zero hunger, and it's closely linked with reducing malnutrition, sustainable productivity of food production, building a climate resilient agricultural system, and then I guess equitable distribution of our genetic resource and how we use that. So I was just looking again yesterday as to what are the cross links of this with the Department of Agriculture and with the other Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the key things that stood out to me on this is that agriculture is one of the key areas for reducing poverty. So it's very important that that's acknowledged within this. It's one of the things that can most strongly contribute to reducing poverty in developing countries. So again, from that point of view, the Department of Agriculture has been engaged with the UNFCCC on climate change, and it's supporting a work programme on agriculture. And again, it's from that particular point of view to try and get action on agriculture for developing a climate resilient agricultural systems, and the importance for countries to work together on that and how you drive that forward. So again, it's important to keep that in mind. Again, how that links then with water management, goal number 6, then goal number 8, sustainable growth overall, climate action, as I said, and then also the links there that are with reducing inequality between and within countries and gender equality. So overall then, over the most recent thing I guess that the Department of Agriculture has been doing in this area is earlier this summer we launched Foodwise 2025. So again, this is our 4th 10-year strategy, trying to work with industry and all stakeholders that are within that. So the Foodwise was developed with a committee of 36 people from all parts of the different sectors within production systems in Ireland, from academia, from the environmental area, and all worked together to develop a new 10-year strategy for 2025. A key theme of that being that we can't have productive growth without acknowledgement of sustainability, that one can't happen with the other. So the key issue for the department will be how will that be implemented going forward on this. In parallel to that, there is an SCA and AA process, but again I won't go into too much detail on that. But one of the key things that was highlighted within the Foodwise was the knowledge capital that the department had and the ag sector in Ireland. So how do we transfer that to farmers within Ireland and to developing countries in terms of sustainable agricultural practice? How can we provide a leadership role for what that practice is and identify what is sustainable practice? Again, we're recalling back the years, Ireland over the years would have imported dairy genetic material from Denmark and Netherlands, and we found that didn't work in the Irish system. What we found over recent years working with the Irish Cattle Breeding Federation and with stakeholders on the ground was that we actually had the breeding stock ourselves, but it was how did we mobilise an understanding of data on dairy production in Ireland and what was appropriate to the Irish system and the Irish fodder in terms of utilising our grass base. So we've put in place a very strong and robust structure in the Irish Cattle Breeding Federation, working with all the breed societies, farmers on the ground, creating, I suppose, one goal in terms of what that breeding strategy is for the dairy herd and for the beef herd and what that is. So that's just one area in terms of what that is. So I guess the innovation that's in that, it's important to build trust chains in terms of how we promote that going forward. And Ireland, through Teagasc, has been engaged with in Uganda and Ethiopia, working to try and transfer what we've been learning over these process, development of identifying these sustainable practices and how you transfer them to farmers. So Teagasc are working in Ethiopia on sustainable potato production, again, helping them identify disease challenges and how to work with that and how to have clean, disease-free seed potatoes and multiplying that up. Again, in the pig area, Devonish Nutrition are working in Uganda and trying to help them identify what are the feed sources in Uganda that can help to improve pig production there. In Ireland then, the CAP and the Rural Development Programme are primary to implementation of sustainable development. The forestry strategy is there. Indirectly, the bioenergy policy. The Department of Agriculture is working on climate mitigation and adaptation plans to feed into the national plans, which I'm sure Petra will cover on. We're working with Board B then in terms of promotion of sustainability and trying to get it understood at farm level as to what it means. So Board B are promoting it with the business end and with the farmer end as to how we get metrics that farmers understand on that, and that's important to sell a simple message to farmers on the ground. So I guess just to sum up then, Ireland needs to be able to look at all issues in a coherent manner, get all stakeholders working together, building trust with what goals can be going forward to identify what is sustainable practice. We need to be at the cutting edge of R&D. Again, we're developed, so we have been putting a lot of money into research R&D, new incentive schemes. How do we work with farmers to get bottom-up development of incentive schemes that can work and acknowledge what is practice on the ground? So I'll leave you with that to think about.
Thanks for having me here today. Some familiar faces in the audience, and I see we've got some very knowledgeable people here present today, so it's a privilege for me to just give a few opening remarks before we break out into the working groups after this session. So I'll keep it quite short. There's 2 points really I wanted to make in connection with Ireland's obligations and how I feel we can contribute to achieving in particular this goal 2. And that is that, first of all, I think in the workshops this afternoon, we need to consider that the perspective on these sustainable development goals are both looking inward as well as looking outward. So when we look at the different aspects of goal 2, we look at ending hunger, I think we need to ask ourselves questions like, what are we doing here at home to end hunger? How are our choices and our policy decisions and practices here going to affect the hunger problem, the food poverty problem on a global scale? And the same in terms of food security and improving nutrition. These are problems we need to address internally as well as externally, and how are we going to lead the way on that? And John made some references to how we can do that, or that is being looked at, which is quite encouraging compared with the comments that we heard for those of you who saw at the Taoiseach speech in New York last week, where the focus was very much on the aid aspect, the overseas aid aspect of the Sustainable Development Goals. I think we need to remember today to broaden out the remit. It's not simply about funding things in developing nations and giving more money, although that's one aspect of it. We also need to look at is our own agricultural model sustainable, and how do the objectives within that, the growth objectives within that, and the policies we're pursuing, how do they have an effect on the global problems of world hunger? So these are questions I'd like to see us develop further in the afternoon. I think it's important that we don't let the Sustainable Development Goals to simply become only about aid. You know, that's a trap I think we must resist falling into. And it's incumbent upon all of us over the next few years working towards policy change on these items and attitude change among civil society, that we give that message to people and that we become ambassadors for that message. So that's the first point I'd like to make. And the second one connected to that is, what can we do on a practical level? Because when we look at things like ending hunger, it seems massively ambitious. I think, I don't know if any of us truly believe that by 2030 we can gather in this room again and have achieved all of these goals that have been set out here. But certainly we can start to look at what we can do both as individuals and as different groupings that are working together in order to move towards achieving these. And one I would say is very much measuring our impact needs to be one of the very first steps. And I don't mean measuring the impact of our admirable aspirations, but I mean measuring the actual impact of what's happening on the ground. So within the agriculture sector, we have Minister Coveney saying that he has an objective of getting to 300,000 more cattle. We need to see what's going to be the impact on the environment and on soil and on water of having those extra cattle on the need to possibly import feed for them. We also need to look at the widespread practice on the ground over the last couple of years of scrub destruction, when we were told by Minister Hayes had said to us categorically that the department would not fund scrub. And as NGOs we worked very hard to lobby on that and to try and get a change, and there has been some change and reinterpretation of the rules coming from Brussels on the new cap that there is opportunities to fund that, but we must not ignore the fact that we've had widespread habitat destruction and widespread loss of the ecological services that are provided by those habitats over the last number of years. Equally, within the agriculture remit, we need to examine our forestry model, which is still focused on large monocultures of non-native species designed to be clear felled. And these are not sustainable practices when tested robustly by external forces. So it's very important that while, yes, we want to be wearing the green jersey and promoting Ireland as a sustainable economy, as a sustainable agricultural region, we also must not blind ourselves by only testing the impact of what we aspire to achieve, but actually about being realistic about the damages and the problems that we have internally. I think it's critical that we do that before somebody externally comes in and does it, like WWF did with the Living Planet Index a couple of years ago, where we were right up there with the likes of Qatar and the United Arab Emirates in terms of our global impact of how we're living here. And that's not only down to government to do, but that's down to all of us to do as consumers and as individuals and as NGOs and different groupings on this. So one very final small point is when we look at the different indicators as we go through there, I think that's where a lot of the work and what we can achieve can be focused upon. And there's one within there, I see it hasn't been pulled out on our poster, but there's a mention in there about elimination of all forms of agricultural export subsidies. And we're still operating those within Ireland. We're still offering subsidies on all sorts of different type of agricultural exports. So we need to see a commitment from government to actually implement the things that have been signed off on here, and that's one very specific one that we could start looking at. We need to see us as organisations working together in order to take what we've signed up to and what we've committed to and ensure that we see progressive achievements of it as the years go by, and not just have these as aspirations that sit there and are not actually acted upon. So I look forward to working with you all in the afternoon sessions. Thank you.